What's so good about Monster Hunter? I recently picked up Monster Hunter Rise for pretty cheap on the Switch, and it's now become probably one of my favourite games of all time, and that's made me want to make this video to try and tell you a little bit about what I think is so good about it. So first, let's go through some background, like what is Monster Hunter? Well, it's a long-running series of action games that started way back in about 2004, I think, on the PlayStation 2. If you look online, you'll probably notice people talk about the fact that there's mainline games and portable games. Recent mainline games would be the ones like Monster Hunter World or Monster Hunter Wilds. These games tend to be more story heavy, they have more realistic looking graphics, they generally have a slower and heavier feel. Then you've got the portable games. Recently that would be Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Hunter Generations. They've got like simpler graphics and a little bit more arcadey and faster paced. That's how I'd explain the main sort of differences. Each game in the series tends to have its own gimmicks or like its own distinct gameplay features. Some of these features carry on to later games, some don't. However though, at their core, they're basically the same game. They're third-person action boss rush games with slow, commitment-heavy combat where each of the weapons is almost like a game of its own. And overall, I think the game has a really nice learning curve, and that's probably my favourite thing about it. So, how does it work? You start off the game by making a character. You'll probably make a buddy or two depending on the version of the game you're playing. You'll have a base or a village location with NPCs to talk to and shops. From there you can take quests and then you go out into the world and do missions. At the beginning of the game things are chill. Maybe you'll go around a nice green forest, harvest some mushrooms, or maybe hunt some small monsters like these lizards. But pretty soon you'll need to hunt larger, more dangerous creatures like these bear rabbits or these raptor looking guys. And before you know it, it ramps right up and you're in a volcano surrounded by lava, fighting huge dragons and other crazy creatures. It gets really, really over the top and amazing. And so the loop then is that you bring back the items that you've gathered during the mission, whether that's from harvesting or hunting, and you use those items to craft new, stronger gear that lets you carry on murdering animals that are just living their lives. Another part that's real cool is you get to team up with randoms or friends to go online and go hunting together. It's really good fun playing it this way, but I do recommend, dear viewer, that you play solo at the beginning just to learn the basics and how each monster behaves. You don't want to be the one that keeps letting the team down. So what's so good about it? Ultimately, it's a game of mastery. It's about learning to get good and the satisfaction that comes along with that. These are huge, generous games. There's too much to talk about in this short video, so I'm just going to try and list my top 3 parts of the experience that really made it stand out. First is the learning curve. There's an element of repetition to the game by design. You progress through the hunter ranks as you play. Each rank brings new monsters to hunt, but as you get further along, you'll increasingly fight more dangerous versions of the ones you've fought before. The interesting thing about this is how the monsters become more dangerous. They often subvert your expectations of how they behave, which leads to like a surprising, iterative learning experience. Combined with how you also learn the map layouts and get more efficient at getting around, it's a really, really satisfying game, and it does feel like you're a hunter, getting to know the world and its wildlife. When you're first starting out, the monsters are quite slow, they leave lots of space between their attacks, and they only have a handful of moves. It gives you a nice bit of freedom to take your time, learn how your weapon works, learn how the creatures work, and just get a feel for the pace of the game. After you've hunted a monster for the first time, you'll get an entry in your encyclopedia, letting you learn more about their weaknesses, and how you might be able to focus on getting specific monster parts for that new sword you wanted to make at the blacksmith. Sooner or later, you'll be fighting the same monsters again at a higher rank, and they'll have new moves that might have tails or wind-up that look very similar to the old ones, or extend their attack chains to include attacks you haven't seen before, and they do this specifically to mess with you, which I really love. The downtime between the moves becomes shorter, they get much more aggressive, and it's a lot harder to know when it's your turn to attack. They even do crazy stuff eventually, like faking being hurt or doing follow-ups that are specifically designed to catch you out if you used a quick recovery after getting knocked down. A lot of the veteran long-time players complain about how easy the game is at the beginning, but as a new player kind of to this series, I found it just right. It's very good at letting you slowly build up your knowledge and then uses that knowledge against you to mess with you. And I think that's just god tier design. It's really, really cool. It feels like you're always learning and improving, and like there's so much content to experience and master. And not being funny, the game is still exceptionally difficult towards the end. So that learning curve and player progression is the first thing I think is quite good. The next part is probably the combat and the weapons. The action in the game is fairly slow and deliberate. Mashing buttons is not going to get you very far. There's no real lock-on, so you have to work on properly positioning yourself, timing and aiming your attacks, or you'll end up just swinging at thin air. This does make the game quite tricky, considering that sometimes you want to be going for headshots, trying to cut off tails, but overall it makes the game feel quite unique and very, very satisfying to get good at. Learning the monster's animations, reacting, moving yourself to where you need to be, and then landing like a perfect headshot is so good. And oh boy, those weapons. The weapons are probably the most inventive I've ever seen in a game. Each one's like a minigame of its own, offering a wide range of playstyles, from a nimble sword and board, you can go hammers and go for headshots, there's rifles and guns, and weird, wild and wonderful combinations of all of these things. You definitely should be able to find something that feels very nice for your first time through the game. The diversity of the weapons also means that you have a good reason to play through it again, or play one of the sequels or prequels using a different weapon for a different kind of challenge and experience. And I guess the last thing I really like about these games is I like being treated like an adult with a brain. Monster Hunter does have a bit of a rep for having terrible tutorials, and like, my god, it really does. And some of the menus are mind-melting the first time you see them. But generally the game trusts you to play, experiment, watch what happens, and figure out how to get good by yourself, and I love a game that does that. And there we go, that's it. I just wanted to keep this short. I didn't even give myself time to talk about the goofy cat friends you meet or the weird dining mini games. But man, if you like the sound of it, I really recommend you check it out. If you want to see a bit more before deciding, I've done a long play of the first few hours of Monster Hunter Rise. It's all linked down below. But you know what to do. Smash those buttons if you've had a good time, and I'll catch you in the next one.